Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Richardson and this is the news. Today we start with a happy ending. Yesterday we reported on the kidnapping of 3-year-old Alicja in the northeast city of Białystok. The young girl was taken along with her mother, the abduction being witnessed by her grandmother from the window of her flat. The police immediately applied their high-priority child alert procedure, and this afternoon the mother and child were found unharmed near the city of Ostrolenka.
2 people, one of them the father of the child, were apprehended. The child and her mother are safe under police care. The stopping of the kidnappers was possible thanks to swift police action. According to witnesses, the abduction took place yesterday at about 10 a.m. on the Dziesięcina neighborhood in Białystok. The 2 men were to force a woman and her daughter into a car and speed away. Police around the country were put on alert. Child alert was very helpful in this case. It was used for only the 3rd time since its introduction in 2013. As a result, we received quite a few tips from the public, and it shows that the Polish society is very responsible and helpful. We received no frivolous tips or pranks. An investigation in the matter was opened in the district prosecutor's office in Białystok. This offence qualified as 1 count of forced illegal detainment and 1 count of kidnapping of a minor. The prosecutors are investigating what kind of custody arrangements are in place at the moment for the parents. If a parent has full custody, then the instance of taking away the child is not a crime in terms of kidnapping of a minor. It qualifies as a so-called parental kidnapping, and this is not a crime in Poland. Parental kidnappings are not rare in Poland. Parents who want to kidnap their child often use detective agencies. We can help in case of such quote-unquote kidnapping. We can establish when and where the child goes to preschool, all the facts of the child's daily schedule, and then we can assist the mother or father in taking the child away. We can assist, but we cannot be the ones doing the apprehension. Sorry. Private detective Mirosław Błaszczyk emphasizes that the fight between spouses for children is often very dramatic. I always explain to our clients the child's livelihood is the priority. There are often cases involving an ego of one of the parents. The woman took off, the man took off, someone was angry. Often here the well-being of the child isn't taken into account. The child goes through enormous trauma. Imagine, the child is being kidnapped several times in the same month, once by the father, once by the mother. Here the situation is peculiar because the mother was abducted along with her daughter. This might be the positive from this event because the child was not separated from her mother, a person known to her she is close to.
In the not-so-distant past, VAT fraud has cost the Polish state treasury billions in lost revenue. This government is fighting this crime, and during the conference on VAT loopholes, the Prime Minister, Mateusz Morawiecki, stressed that the previous government lacked the responsibility, professionalism and will to fight VAT fraud. The increased rate of VAT collection is, according to Morawiecki, one of the most important factors in the minor economic miracle we are enjoying in Poland, and proves that state institutions do work properly.
The anti-money laundering procedure has been functioning in banks for 20 years. We introduced a similar procedure called anti-VAT laundering. Our procedure verifies a potential money laundering transaction in banks. This is over 8.5 billion transactions, so it is a huge number. We can compare our actions to war, because we called in the big guns, and that is what surprised the market. Let's take a look back to the years 2006 and 2007, when we were happy with the VAT tax income. It was 8.1% for gross domestic product, and now it is 8.2, 8.3% for gross domestic product. So, comparing apples with apples, we closed this gap, but there's always something to do.
On Thursday, Gdańsk City Council stripped Henryk Jankowski, a priest, of his honorary citizenship of the city. Members of the council also decided to change the name of the square that had been named after him and to remove his statue. These decisions follow revelations in the media that Jankowski had for years been sexually molesting minors. Jankowski, who died in 2010, did not face criminal charges during his lifetime.
This morning, activists from the Solidarity movement who initially funded the monument dismantled it. In December, Duży Format magazine published a report in which it was written that priest Henryk Jankowski was presumed to be responsible for the suicide of a teenage girl who was allegedly carrying his child. According to the report, the priest had sexually abused minors for years. The controversy does not end there. The records of the Institute for National Remembrance show that in the early 80s he was an associate of the Communist Ministry of Public Security.
I just thought when I read about it today that after the deaths of each of us who have lived in the public life, when we eventually pass on from this earth, we also will not have the ability to defend ourselves. These accusations have not been documented. We must eliminate all foul emotions, yet there should be no place in the public space for people who raise such controversy. On the other hand, I would not want to ascribe to making these kinds of judgments. If that is the decision of the City Council, they have the right to make it. I would only like to say that I do not appreciate all this confusion around the monument, with it first being demolished only to later be erected again. I believe that those issues should be dealt with in a more honorable way.
According to the representatives of the Gdańsk division of the Solidarity Club, members of the Gdańsk City Council might have broken at least 2 constitutional articles, like the one mentioning presumption of innocence before the final verdict of the court. To show their protests, activists erected a golden Donald Tusk monument in front of the City Council building in a Peruvian hat and a shirt saying Constitution. Rzeczpospolita Daily points to doubts surrounding the legitimacy of Piotr J., who was said to be one of the Jankowski's victims of abuse. The same witness also accused a prominent MP of rape. In this case, the prosecution denounced his story.
Polish rapper Piotr Kowalczyk, better known under his stage name Tau, published an online video in which he spoke out against the so-called LGBT+ declaration signed by the Warsaw mayor Rafał Trzaskowski. The declaration promotes the agenda of the homosexual lobby, for example, in the education sector.
Certain groups want to force this so-called sexual education in our schools. This implies teaching children about masturbation, birth control, and they want them to play with artificial sexual organs. This is not a joke. This is already happening in the West. That is why we must all mobilize. This requires full mobilization. Share this clip, share the petition, make people aware of this problem. If we do not stop this, the scenario happening in Western countries will repeat itself here. Dirty hands will be laid on our Polish children. We cannot allow this. Thank you for your attention. I hope you will rise to the occasion and do what is required of us. This is an issue of honor and conscience.
Among his many duties today, there was something rather more pleasant than normal for the Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki. He was talking about those who make up over half the Polish population. Some will say the nicer part, and others will definitely insist on the better half. We mean, of course, Poland's women, for whom, as Poland celebrated International Women's Day, the Prime Minister had some warm words of praise.
In an interview for the TVN24 channel, Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki admitted that he has taken changes to the Sunday trading prohibition under consideration. He added that a political debate concerning the social and economic effects is going to take place. Unfortunately, the evolution of the Polish economy in the time of the Third Republic of Poland led to the fact that foreign shops and shopping centres are dominating. So one of the goals, even a dream, was for the lesser Polish shops to develop. The first analyses indicate that this didn't happen. My imagination goes far. I see a variety of solutions. We can take different actions, but exactly what? To answer that, we have to wait a while. The Sunday trade prohibition came into force in January 2018. The draft law was introduced by the Solidarity Trade Union. Workers in the big shopping centres demanded Sundays free of work. According to originators, there is no need to change the law, but to clarify it. Opinions of MPs are divided. They're due to work on the 2 trade prohibition drafts on March 13th. The first draft was introduced by the Modern Party. The draft abolishes the trade prohibition law, but introduces a guarantee that employees have 2 Sundays off per month instead. The second draft was introduced by the Law and Justice Party, but there are no details about it. The party's previous draft concerned the trade prohibition for shops that operate as post offices, but this proposition will be withdrawn in favour of other changes. There won't be a return to general trading. It's all about clarifying this law.
czy będziemy to zmieniać w przyszłości.
According to publicist Rafał Ziemkiewicz, Hungary had a similar problem and retreated from the trade prohibition.
Viktor Orbán jest pragmatycznym.
The Hungarian Prime Minister retreated from this law, but he's a pragmatic politician. Our politicians are waiting for the Solidarity Trade Union's opinion. The trade prohibition introduces chaos and consumers don't like that.
Naciskom związkowym ulegał.
The Sunday trade prohibition has been introduced gradually since January 2018. Now it operates on 3 Sundays of the month. According to the law, shops will be closed on every Sunday from next year, with days leading up to Christmas excluded.
That's all from the news. Thank you for watching. Do stay with us for the weather, business and more besides. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.
Welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Let's see the forecast for tonight. In central and western Poland, skies will be cloudless in all regions where except the high temperature. A pleasant 8 degrees we will see on the south. In central Poland, temperature will range about 7 degrees. The coldest places that night will be the northeast with 6 degrees. Overcast sky will appear around Rzeszów, and there we will see rainfall as well. The pressure will drop. Let's see the forecast for tomorrow. In most regions, we may accept plenty of sunlight, but with little rainfall. Temperatures ranging from 8 degrees in the north to 12 in the south. The wind will be less gusty in the whole country. Let's check the weather for the next days. On Sunday, little rainfall will appear across the Poland. Pressure will be still low. The highest temperature we will see on the south with 10 degrees. On Monday, rainfall will stay with us. Temperature will drop to 4 degrees along the Baltic coast. On Tuesday, temperature will fall to 5 degrees in the southeast, and there we will accept snowfall. The highest temperatures will be 8 degrees in the southwest. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
Welcome to Poland Daily Business Edition. Tonight our guest is Dr. Adam Czyżewski of PKN Orlen, Chief Economist of the company. Sir, welcome to the show.
Hello, good morning.
Let's say a few words about the new energy. The Polish electricity market is very much harmed by the regulation regarding the CO2 emission, and some say that this pressure is only going to be bigger. So what the country like Poland, that is based on coal, should do in such condition?
I mean, that's true, and we also share this opinion that the situation will be tougher for hard coal-based energy because of rising costs of emissions of CO2, and this is something which, if one looks long term, is inevitable because according to knowledge the world has to contain emissions. So when future is uncertain, one thing, to my opinion, is certain, that we will live in the world when the cost of CO2 emissions are higher, will be higher and higher. So what Poland should do? I mean, Poland should divert from coal, slowly but surely. And nobody, I think, expects of us that we, from day to day, we will abandon our coal and we will, go to different energy sources. But we should, in our energy policy, long-term energy policy, show a transition from coal. Why we stick to coal? Because this is our local resource, yes? But when we take wind or solar, it's also local, so it doesn't hamper energy security.
Right. The problem with solar is that we don't have too much of it. The wind, it's maybe okay, but on the Baltic Sea, and the question if there is enough place to put the turbines and get enough juice from it to power our economy, which is incidentally based on south of the country. So again, it's over 500 kilometers of the energy line to deliver to the final customer.
Yeah, but there are solutions which, for example, distributed power generation, when household can generate power and they can be active player on the market. There are technologies which can combine small units which each unit may combine solar, wind, thermal energy, and build a virtual power plants. So, and nobody expects from us that we will go with coal to zero, because in the future probably, because there's a lot of coal in the world, and I haven't seen any scenario, long-term scennario, even the scenario published by International Energy Agency, which are so-called, climate scenarios. In these scenarios, there is a power from coal, but there is a hope that there will be technologies which will, capture CO2 from emissions, and then, this coal would be greener. So we should simply present a long-term strategy how to get out of coal by simply building in other blocks, in other energy mix.
You mentioned a thing that is very rarely mentioned in Poland, the CO2 sequestration facilities that at least I'm aware of two such plants, one in Canada, another in Switzerland, built and being operated. Maybe this is the solution to get out from this loop that the European Union is putting on us. Just put 10 plants like that in Poland and tell them, we are basically neutral.
Yeah, that is a solution, but now it's a costly solution. Years ago, our PGE power plant in Bełchatów voluntarily wanted to test such a solution, but it happened. We realized that it would be very, very costly, and actually, regulations in the EU are such that in countries which produce this CCS equipment, you can capture carbon dioxide, but the problem is where to store it, because no country wants to store it.
There are actually two kinds of equipment. One is storing the captured CO2 underneath, and another is sort of bottling it and selling on the market, thus sort of balancing the expensive cost of the sequestration. Maybe put it in the market. This is the solution.
Yeah, this is the solution. That actually now these technologies, they used to be called CCS, carbon capture and storage. They are called carbon capture, storage and use. So there is a lot of potential use of CO2, and I'm pretty sure that we will have proper technologies which will help us to
Did you try this in Poland?
Actually, I'm not sure about that. I know that whether we try it, we certainly didn't try it in PKN, but in universities, in mining university in Katowice, I know that there are attempts to use carbon to push out methane from shell formation, which would potentially help us to develop our shell.
So that sounds like a holy grail. You take out from the earth the valuable thing like methane, you use it commercially, and instead you put down the CO2.
Yeah, because if you use capture, and I mean methane also produces while burning CO2. So, but technologies say that capturing CO2 from gas is easier than from solid materials.
But anyway, we will have to adjust and do something with the CO2 emission, because otherwise our energy will become too expensive, harming our export and competitivity in the world market.
Yeah, and there are programs, even in EU, devoted, financial programs for financing transfer from carbon-based energy to other energy sources. So there is a financial support. Also, financial sector now is more willing to finance carbon projects, but those which will transform carbon energy into another transition from carbon to another type of energy, because more and more banks and financial institutions now simply refuse financing investments in carbon power plants.
So the shortest solution for the CO2 emission problem is what?
The shortest is to have a strategy how to long-term strategy, how to decarbonize economy, and then, if there is such a strategy, then everybody knows what to do. Research, science, applied research, financial institution, etc., because we have a clear path what to do. The worst thing is, wait and see what happens, because we know what's going to happen. We will pay more and more for our electricity.
And this position of the champion of the world in economic term may be harmed. Sir, thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you very much.
We don't have easy solutions, unfortunately, but hopefully we'll get one sooner or later. Mr. Adam Czyżewski, PhD and Chief Economist of PKN Orlen, was our guest tonight, and that was it for tonight's Poland Daily Business.
Welcome back to Poland Daily Weather. Let's take a look at the forecast for tomorrow. In most regions we may expect plenty of sunlight, but with little rainfall. Temperatures ranging from 8 degrees in the north to 12 in the south. The wind will be less gusty in the whole country. Let's take a look at tomorrow's forecast for our continent. In the Balkans, temperature will range about 18 degrees. On the South Europe, temperature will little drop to 17 in Madrid and 16 in Lisbon. Still warm in Rome, 18 degrees. In British Islands, we may expecting rainfall. Snowfall will appear in Scandinavia, and there the temperature will increase to 4 degrees in Oslo and Stockholm. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
In today's Poland Daily Culture, we're going to show you one of the lesser spoken about but very visible aspects of Polish life in the 20th century, the neon sign. The Neon Museum in Warsaw is dedicated to the documentation and the preservation of Cold War-era neon signs and electrographic design. Since 2005, they have been engaged in the enormous task of documenting and preserving the last surviving remnants of the Great Neonization campaign across the former Eastern Bloc. Their ongoing efforts have been credited with ushering in a new neon renaissance throughout Poland, a movement that began with the opening of the first and only museum of its kind in Europe. The permanent collection contains hundreds of dazzling neon signs and other electrographic artifacts, many of which were designed by the great artists of the age, who were responsible for the world-famous Polish poster school. The museum illustrates the unique characteristics of a known art form which was born from revolution, served as state propaganda, and flourished during Poland's post-war period.
How did it sort of evolved then in Poland over the years? So we've got sort of several examples behind us, but if you're thinking about it existed sort of pre-war and then sort of during socialism sort of really came to the fore. How did that evolve then, stylistically?
Well, actually, the pre-war advertising was pure advertising, and so the owners paid for the neons, and they wanted to have a good advertising of their company. And as I mentioned, the post-war neons were more to adorn the city. So the main aim wasn't to advertise anything. So there was some kind of, we would say now, pointless neons like Russian railways or Eastern German counting machines, something you wouldn't buy as a private consumer. And in some cities there were also interesting neons that actually didn't advertise anything. There's still one example in Wrocław, close to the railway station, saying "Good evening in Wrocław," with a man waving his hat. There were also like neon "Smile for a Smile" or Gdańsk, the city of flowers. So just pure, I don't know how we could call those neons, but only purely for decorating the night cityscape.
It's funny because you're reminding me actually of there is a contemporary neon actually in the city. I forget which bridge it's on in Warsaw. It says something like "Nice to see you" in Polish. Do you think this is some kind of maybe not renaissance of neon, but do you think there's a rekindling of interest then? Or?
Certainly, yes. Actually, this neon is partially made because of us. We've organized a competition for new neon of Warsaw. We didn't specify the form of the neon. We received several hundreds of designs, and this "Miło Cię widzieć," nice to see you, on a bridge, Gdański Bridge, won the public vote. And now you can see it close to the Vistula River, because we want not only to protect old neons, but also to educate or promote good design values. And actually we can see now a renaissance of neons, like very popular cafes or even bakeries that want to stand out, invest in neons, usually in interesting forms. So when you travel around the city, you can see very interesting contemporary neons as well.
Do those companies, they sort of consult with you, or does the museum or yourself play some kind of artistic role, or?
Actually, in some cases they do. They also consult us for design of the neon. So David Hill, who's a graphic designer and also the owner of the museum, also has done some designs like Kino Electronic, one of the cinemas in Warsaw. It's a very retro style. And so we also consult on those old neons or on technologies or show old designs for inspiration. We can see actually now that there are some very interesting neons around the city.
Yeah, when I first think about neons in contemporary age, or even perhaps in the past, I think about the kind of more classic cinemas in Warsaw, where the signs still exist. What's the kind of relationship between the lights and cinema in Poland?
Well, actually, the cinemas were an important place in the cultural map of the cities. So there was always a desire for example, for the building to stand out. Those post-war cinemas usually had interesting architecture, and also the neons were to catch the attention of the people. And it was a big space for the neons usually, so there were really nice examples. For example, Kino Atlantic had a very big neon with waves and a ship. Yeah, so they on the night map of the city, you could easily see where the cinema is located.
And has it sort of Do you think their significance kind of lessened due to the sort of increase in other kind of like street lights, etc., because perhaps it didn't stand out in quite the same way? So maybe in many decades ago, a sort of neon light was more striking, perhaps.
Actually, that's true, because the street lighting has improved over the years. In the past, was more the streets were darker, so also the neons made those streets lighter. They introduced more lights to the streets. Now we have a lot of advertising and new technologies, so it's more chaotic, in my opinion. The main reason behind this why those neons aren't as popular as they were is because of the costs. Now there are other technologies that are cheaper available, but they are not so nice as the neons.
Just returning to the sort of the collection here in the museum, could you tell us about how you kind of procure, how you get the lights themselves? Are you requesting them, or are the companies coming to you offering, or?
Actually, usually companies come to us saying that, for example, they're closing the shop down, or the building will be renovated, and they don't want to throw out the neons, and ask us if we could take it to our collection. But there are also interesting stories behind specific neons. For example, we have a neon Restauracja Ambassador. It's actually behind me. This neon was acquired by the ambassador of Luxembourg. He was very keen on post-war design, and he was driving through the center of the city, and he noticed that this neon is being taken down. So he has sent his assistant to collect the neon, and the neon went to the garage of the embassy of Luxembourg. And before the ambassador moved to another country, he passed this neon to our collection.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are here at the reenactment of one of the most historical battles that took place in Poland. The battle known as Osinka Grochowska took place 188 years ago, and it was what ultimately stopped the Russians from taking over Warsaw. In the year 1795, Poland was partitioned by three of its neighbors, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. They were wiped out of the map of Europe, but almost 30 years later, they rise up against the Russian forces in what otherwise known as the November Uprising. Thanks to this very battle, the Poles managed to stop the Russians from invading Warsaw, taking over the capital, and potentially spare the lives of thousands of civilians. Many Poles fought on the side of France during the Napoleonic Wars. As a result, the French set up a semi-independent state called the Duchy of Warsaw in 1807. After Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo and the 1815 Congress of Vienna, Russia took control over Warsaw again. However, one of the provisions of the Congress of Vienna stipulated that the semi-autonomous status of the Duchy of Warsaw would remain in the new Russian satellite state known as the Congress Kingdom. The Polish Congress Kingdom was allowed to have its own constitution, one of the most liberal in Europe of the time. But a couple of years after the Vienna Congress, the Russian Tsar started ignoring the constitution. As a consequence, the Poles decided to revolt against the Russian Empire in 1830, an event which became known as the November Uprising. When it comes to the November Uprising, what would you say is the major driving force behind it? And would you say the whole event was carried out successfully or not really?
W języku polskim mamy dwa określenia. Zryw narodowy, tak jak w okresie napoleońskim.
In the Polish language there are two terms for this uprising. Zryw, like in the Napoleonic period, and powstanie, and here there is a hidden historical flaw which cannot now be rectified. The entire uprising is called the November Uprising, but it was made up of two separate components. The first was the eruption of the uprising, and this ended in success. We have the right to say that the November Uprising uprising was a success because the Congress was liberated as well as a large part of Lithuania, but after the uprising on February 6, 1831, Russian aggression followed. 150,000 troops from the Russian Tsarist army entered Poland, and there is a Polish-Russian war. So it can be said that the uprising was a success, but ultimately the war was lost. This is primarily because just like 100 years earlier, the three partitioning powers got back together. The Prussians immediately began helping Russia, sending them their own military provisions over the border and allowing the Russian army to cross the Vistula on their turf. The entire army traveled along the northern side of Mazovshe up to the border where the Vistula flows into the Prussian state. There the Prussians prepared boats, even a bridge, and the entire army crossed into the southern side of the Congresses and then back into the Tsarist state from the Prussian state. Austria, which already had a dispute with Russia over Balkan territories, initially supported the Poles, but later reached the conclusion that this wasn't a good idea, because if the Poles are liberated, they will take the province of Galicia. The Austrian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Clemens von Metternich, who is a master of intrigue from the time of the Congress of Vienna, was to tell a French MP that going to war in order to get back a province makes sense, but going to war in order to lose a province makes no sense, so Austria abandoned Poland. Nevertheless, an important detail to note is that this entire rise was referred to as an uprising, and in the end it had to be conceded that the uprising collapsed. But Poles are the masters of uprisings and want to have at least one successful one, and this is the second, deeper way of looking at it, that the uprising was successful, but the war had to be lost.
Powstanie nam się udało, ale wojnę musieliśmy przegrać.
Russia's revenge against Poland for having launched the November Uprising was harsh. However, some historians argue that the November Uprising was necessary in order to preserve the Polish identity. Next, we will speak with Dr. Krzysztof Jabłonka about the lasting effects of the November Uprising.
So would you say there are any positive effects as the aftermath of the uprising? Anything positive that came out of it?
Oczywiście trzeba pamiętać, że represje carskie były rzeczywiście dotkliwe.
It must be remembered that the Tsarist repressions were indeed severe. The autonomy of the Congress Kingdom was abolished, the army disbanded, the Sejm stopped functioning and found refuge abroad. The state, which was saved during this of Vienna, fell apart. But on the other hand, Poles achieved two very important things. Before the war erupted, and in fact this is what caused it, the Sejm was able to dethrone not only Tsar Nicholas, but his entire dynasty. From this moment, no Pole had a moral obligation, and remember, this obligation concerned the Polish nobility to serve the Russian Tsar. This was now a Tsar for the Russians. He was no longer the King of Poland. That's why it has to be admitted, although it leaves a bitter taste in the mouth, that the last King of Poland was the dethroned King Nicholas I. Because he was the Tsar, he was thrown out, but it can't be said he was dethroned if it isn't recognized that he was the king. He was crowned in 1829. Even the most astounding Polish drama, Juliusz Słowacki's Kordian, describes a scene where a young officer wants to murder the intruder, but because he has the Polish crown, and in Poland the king was almost never killed, although a few died in battle, he stops himself from committing this murder. He isn't able to go through with the killing because he is anointed. So the dethronement takes place, breaking all ties. From this point on, the Polish nation, and particularly its intelligentsia, officers, creators of Polish culture, will develop independently of Russian culture. The Russian Empire will be deprived of Poles, and it's Poles who could have helped Russia with its greatest desire, to conquer Constantinople. The Poles will go on to fight with the Turks against the Romanov Empire, the Russian Empire in Europe, and will play a great role causing the Balkans to rebel, supporting a democratic Germany, so they don't come to an agreement with Russia, and finally supporting Austria at the right moment. The First War will in some sense be the success of Poles, that two Germanic empires will smash, in fairness another Germanic empire, but taking the Russian name. From the war Poland will be reborn, and so the beginning of Poland being reborn is in the November Uprising, with the decision to dethrone Nicholas and be completely cut off in every way, with the exception of the economy, from the Tsarist Empire. From this point on, Poles Poles will go underground. They will pay a terrible price. No universities, no schools, the Russification of the peasants, but despite this, will survive.
Będą płacić straszne oceny. Nie mamy uniwersytetów, nie mamy nawet szkolnictwa. Rusyfikacja chłopów. Ale mimo to przetrwamy.
So you were saying that the uprising doesn't only have its positive effect, but Poland also paid a really hefty price when it comes to carrying it out. And I was wondering, what are the other repercussions, what are the revenge that was carried out by the Russians for the uprising?
Rzeczywiście zemsta Rosji była straszna. Właściwie rozegrała się w 3 dziedzinach.
Indeed, the revenge of the Russians was frightening. It played out in 3 areas. The first was economic. The entire Polish nobility was taxed with the massive sum of 7 billion rubles, with which a citadel was built, so basically a fortress in southern Warsaw, from which the Tsar promised he would destroy Warsaw and not rebuild it. A second area was the eradication of Polish education, particularly top high schools in Poland. The University of Warsaw, called the Royal University of Warsaw, taking its name from Alexander, disappeared. The Vilnius University was moved to Petersburg and was the basis for the university over there. In fact, it was an extension of it. The Krzemieniec Lyceum in Volhynia wasn't only gotten rid of, but its great numismatic collections and books were taken. What was the effect? A university was founded in Kiev out of a Polish high school, which began the birth of Ukraine. If Ukraine isn't Russia today, it's thanks to the Krzemieniec Lyceum, which advanced to the rank of a university in Kiev. The third aspect was, not yet on a mass level, but deportation to Siberia. At this time, it was the Polish nobility that was sent to Siberia. Sometimes it was rich townspeople, and then, along with them, came their wives, children, entire families. Siberia developed. It didn't have an intelligentsia. People were sent there as punishment, peasants, villains, and suddenly Siberia was reinforced with 30,000 educated people.
I nagle Syberię zasilęło 30 000 wykształconych.
As we can observe, the memories of the historical battles are still kept alive and well, even centuries after the battles have taken place. Clearly, the struggle for national sovereignty is still a key value within the Polish collective memory. That's it for today. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.
Hello and welcome back to Poland Daily Travel. We're glad you tuned in, or we're glad you're watching us on YouTube. Lots of stuff to see. Your best source for travel information about Poland. We'll be venturing forth soon to exciting sites around Poland and nearby. But today we're in Warsaw, and we're focusing on the Warsaw Old Town. We start at St. Anna's Church and talk about its significance and how Poland saved Europe twice. That's right, count it, twice. We'll be looking at some of the secrets of the old town, some of the stories and vignettes, and just 2 guys going for a walk on a sunny day. So stay with us on Poland Daily Travel. We're really glad you tuned in, because why do we do this? We do it for you. Stay with us.
Here we are walking towards the middle of the Old Town Square. This is the Column Zygmunt that we're walking up to. And we're going to take a walk around the walls of the Old Town. Now, these walls, if I remember, a lot of this wall was left over after the war, right? Or is it all reconstructed as well?
There are original elements pretty much marked on them. Okay. Within a black line that is visible in the distance. Another thing is that we are having 2 lines of our city fortifications. First, constructed in between 1280, 1320.
1280 and 1320?
Yeah, that's when they accomplished the first line of the city walls. And then the second one constructed in 16th century with a moat, with battlements, and the special section of our fortification system, the Barbican, by hey, we can take a look in here.
Oh, you want to look at this?
Yeah, if we took a closer look,
What is this?
Then we will see the little map of the old town. We can see the city walls right in here doubled. We can see the Barbican right in here and the rest of the city walls. Biggest precise reconstruction ever the old town. And right in here...
Wait a second, what did you just say? The biggest precise reconstruction ever of a town?
Right, this one.
In the whole world?
Correct.
It's the biggest total,
precise,
faithful, precise reconstruction of a town ever.
Correct. And this
that's
is
incredible. I didn't know that.
And that's a reason why it became a part of UNESCO Heritage Site list.
So even though, that's the funny part about it, because we've alluded to this, you and I suppose other people often mention this, but even though it is a total, faithful architectural reconstruction based on the old plans, it is not original, yet it's still UNESCO.
And this is all that makes it so amazingly unique. Also, if we took a closer look at the royal castle from above, we can see pentagon shape in here. So it consists of 5 elements, and at the moment it's our museum, also reconstructed, and the original elements were put back inside the places where there were once upon a time. So it also makes it a very interesting place to visit.
Wow. Hey, so you can look and see the royal castle from our vantage point right here. So we're just right next to it again. Again, totally reconstructed and full of Canaletto paintings of Warsaw.
There is one full Canaletto chamber.
One whole room. I've seen it before. It's very interesting.
If I may invite you a little bit closer, hey, let's take a look. The pentagon shape of the royal castle. Only in Warsaw and Sweden there are pentagon shapes of royal castles, because this one developed by Swedish guy, King Sigismund Vasa III, in Swedish style. And at the moment it's a museum, not a swimming pool in here.
Yeah, there's a lot of water in there. It's been raining, but it is a beautiful day. And that's the Column Sigismund.
And that's where we are right now, where this dot is.
That's
where
the
Column Sigismund. And this is exactly where the royal route starts, and it continues up to Wilanów.
So we're going to walk along here, right?
Yes, exactly in between the city walls, which is right over there.
Okay, Poland Daily Travel. We're going to go walk. It's easy for me to say. We're going to go walk on this beautiful day. It's becoming nicer and nicer along the old walls of the totally reconstructed, UNESCO awarded Warsaw Old Town. Let's go. You ready?
Yeah.
Come on. Back with Poland Daily Travel, and we are, as I said, when we broke, walking along the walls of the Warsaw Old Town. Arthur.
Will.
What you got for me on the walls?
Well, once upon a time I would have for you a wooden house in here, one next to another one, next to another one, all of them connected to the wall. So the wall gives you heat during the winter and gives you chill during the summer. So once upon a time Warszawians loved to have houses right in here, even though they wouldn't look the best, they were very comfortable. One of our poem writers, Maria Konopnicka, was born and raised in this area. And nowadays...
What time are we talking about?
So it's before World War II.
Okay. So people, there are small wooden houses up against the wall here.
Correct.
And did you have to have permission to do that? Or how did that evolve?
When it comes to the permission of having a property in here, well, these people were constructing these things mostly themselves.
Okay.
And of course, this idea is not practiced anymore in here because we are having, for instance, Christmas markets.
Right, I saw the Christmas market. We filmed in the Christmas market. It was a lot of fun.
You did?
It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
So you had maybe some oscypki cheese.
We had cheese. We had the mulled wine,
with the cranberries.
all the stuff, yeah.
So this is how Warsawians are spending time right now in here, in between our beautiful. Piotr Biegański. That's how it's called.
It's
this
called
area.
Biegański Street or whatever walkway.
He was involved in a reconstruction and preserving the original elements in here, and that's why we call this area in here of between wall of Piotr Biegański.
Okay.
Now we are walking around this place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, they reconstructed it in a way that we are having this wall.
Oh, here's Canaletto. It's about Canaletto here. What does it say?
Bernardo Bellotto, so-called Canaletto, 1720, 1780, that he was a very important artist, and thanks to his paintings...
He was the painter for the king, Poniatowski.
Exactly.
Right?
The one hired, and thanks to his paintings, it's written in here, we reconstructed the old town, we got the spirit from these paintings, so to reconstruct it just as it was once upon a time.
So you had architectural plans, but you also had, because they hid the architectural plans somewhere during the war, didn't they? So they'd have them at the end.
Yes.
Which was forward-thinking, considering what a disaster it looked like at the time. And they also used these 18th century paintings, which was another reason why we looked at that Canaletto painting.
That's the guy who provided the painting.
And the one that we were talking about when we walked up the street before.
Yes.
And this is the plaque for him. And he's instrumental in the reconstruction of the old town. Yeah? Yeah, fascinating guy.
You started really getting it very well.
I've been practicing.
You have been.
I've been studying hard, believe me. Yeah.
That makes two of us. So we are having a little bit of sunlight, of sunshine on our faces, thanks to the fact that they didn't reconstruct this part of the wall fully. So we have it a little bit opened, and that's why walking around in here is so nice. We are not like in a corridor. We are not like in a tunnel at the moment because of this open and spacious area. Reconstruction of Warsaw was also for the inhabitants. And you know, when I was a kid, I remember with my dad, I was walking on these city walls. Even though I was very young over then, I remember this one thing, walking on these city walls with my dad. That's what I do remember about.
Fantastic. Yeah, they're nice wide walls too. Poland Daily Travel, we're walking along the walls. We're going to continue through the old town and see some other things. Just a couple of guys talking and enjoying this aspect of Warsaw on a really beautiful February day. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Let's go.